Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's edition of Horse's Mouth Live. I am so excited to be here with you. My name's Ellen Rogin, and as always, my intention is to bring you great information to help you in every area of your life, especially your business. And I am so honored to have our guest today, who I'll give you her formal introduction in a minute, but we have Dr. Anita Sanchez with us today, who is such an amazing leader and person in this world. I got to meet Anita through a group we're both in called the Evolutionary Business Council. And this topic, what we're going to talk about today, is about being wise, tapping into our inner wisdom. And it's not something, as Anita says, you can't Google wisdom. This is something that we can tap into for ourselves. So before we start tapping into her wisdom that she has to share with us, I want you to understand how lucky we are to have Anita with us today. Dr. Anita Sanchez is weaving Indigenous wisdom and modern science to support business executives, nonprofit leaders, and their teams all over the world to live their higher purpose in service and joy. So for more than 4 decades, she's consulted and trained really large organizations and nonprofits in her benchmark tools, which she's going to share some of those with us today, to help organizations build a more inclusive environment, more diversity, undoing unconscious bias. She's mentioned before we got started that she's been doing so much training in that. And I know it's something that has been hopefully on many of our minds for quite a while, but especially with what's been bubbling to the surface lately. And, she's helped leaders and teams to build strategies for success. She's also so recognized in so many areas. She was recently named as Conscious Company Media's in 2020, a world-changing woman. And very recently, Women's Foundation, She Is My Hero Award for her leadership in the world. So Anita, thank you. I'm so excited to be here with you and really honored. So thank you.
I'm delighted too. And as we had some conversation before, I love talking to the people who are listening to you, who are your followers, who are your community, because part of my quality of life has been dependent upon this woman, her team, my financial advisors. So I feel like in a little bit of a way, like I'm giving back. So thank you for having me.
In a big way you are, and you are very welcome. So I want to start with this idea of what does it mean? What does Indigenous mean to people? Because I know I've described you that way. She's an Indigenous woman, but I don't actually know that I have the clear definition for that. And I'm thinking that some of our listeners might want some explanation on that as well.
Yes. Well, Indigenous, actually, anthropologically, every human being is Indigenous. We are all made up, as science knows, it tells us, we're all made up of elements of the earth and of the stars, and so we're all Indigenous. However, when we say Indigenous at this time, we're really talking about people, tribes, nations who have continued for millennia, passing down that original knowledge, the wisdom about who we are and what we are in the world. So that's when we talk about indigenous wisdom. That's what I weave into bringing to people, is to understand you are so much more than your role and all these other things, your circumstances in life. Those are all wonderful, and I'm very appreciative of mine. But to understand what is coming from the inside, what is your true gifts, those are what life itself, I feel like, is calling on.
So as an industry that tends to be very in our head, so financial advisors are dealing a lot with analytics and investment processes and details of things. What is your suggestion to move from that intellectual space to more of the wisdom space? And how can people tap into and appreciate that more?
Okay. Well, I think there's a number of ways to do that, to tap in. Part of that is just to slow down. And I know that's hard in a time with everything that's going on, that people are, I got to get this from my business in place and this and this and this. The reality, though, is for business to be successful, it's about our relationships. And so we immediately think about, what is our relationship with our clients? Am I able to be present to really hear what they need? So all the analytics and everything else are clearly critical, important. Obviously, that's what they're coming for, that particular service. But how well those are being done and how well you're able to communicate all this is about your relationship with them. And so, but that wisdom, that ability, the skill you develop to do that starts with your own relationship with yourself. Are you listening to yourself? Do you listen to that intuitive part? Not only the linear kind of training that you have about how to use our brain and our mind, which is so critical, but also a feeling sometimes you get just from your guts. Now, wait a minute. I know that I could go into this next report, but there seems to be something else here. Do I need to hear? I'm here. It's that kind of thing that allows people to be successful in business, whether you're a financial planner or whether you're a CEO of a global corporation or whatever the business that you're about. That becomes really critical. So tapping into that, how to be in right relationship with yourself, other people. And for me, being Indigenous, I'm also, and the concern for the earth itself and that relationship with the earth. How are we going to be sustainable? Because we know, as they used to say, the motto a lot is, you can't make a profit on a dead earth. So this earth that we all share is important to keep it healthy and alive. So our relationships with people and others.
I love that. And we'll come back to that very important point is in terms of being aware of that gut wisdom. We're in the middle of a 5-day financial advisor mindfulness challenge that I'm leading with Horse's Mouth. But so is that the way to get quiet, is through mindfulness or meditation? Or what would you, because I just know when I'm super busy, it's hard to hear that inner wisdom because I'm always on to what's the next thing I have to do. So what are some suggestions to listen more deeply to that wisdom?
Yeah. Well, I find that the most successful people, and we see it in the research too, are people who have a practice. And fundamental to that practice is getting quiet and just listening. So, and it doesn't have to be, oh, I have to have 45 minutes and meditate, or I have to go, on this long run or whatever. It can be short moments throughout the day where you just even take 1 or 2 minutes and you just slow down enough to take a deep breath and just focus on your breathing, focusing what is happening on your body, what you're feeling, what you're thinking. And I know when you say, financial people are very much about the brain, but what we know about the brain now is that it is going to just keep cycling, and that in order for us to not go into flight, fight, freeze, into more of a primitive mind because we're racing, we're thinking about survival and stuff, that what happens is it takes the glucose away from the prefrontal cortex, where that's where you get to make your decision making. That's where you do the relationship building. That's what we need to be really effective in our businesses. So just even that practice of taking even a couple of minutes, multiple times a day, to just say, right now, I'm just going to be aware of me, aware of my breath, aware of what I'm feeling in my body. And then what you'll find, that I find with working with business people, is that they end up taking that practice and more into different settings. When they're in the middle of rushing on something, they'll go, wait a minute, let me just get quiet and see, is this really what is mine to do right now? And your brain will answer, but also what's starting to happen, you're touching into, is your heart and your guts, that intuitive knowing, that wisdom that you can't Google, that comes from within and comes from experience. So you deserve, even as busy and as tough as circumstances could be, you deserve the quiet time. It's for you. And then as you do that, let me say what it really helps in terms of your business relationships, whether it's a vendor you buy from or a colleague that you work with or a client, is that you just realize that listening is one of the most effective things, the most precious things that you can give to another. Because every human being wants to be heard and acknowledged. And when you do that, when they see authentically, you know how to do that. To not just be like, I've got to get through this, but like, I'm going to get through this and I'm going to make ample time because all the while I'm going to be present to you. That is the difference. That's the people you want to stay around. That's the people who, like for me, to have my financial planner for almost 30 years.
Yeah, and I know for me that I worked on my listening skills very early in my career, and hopefully my clients when I was working with individuals felt that. As you were sharing that, like the really being there, I think because I was had so much of my attention on my clients and being effective for them, that where I was less than excellent, and I'm doing a lot of work on that now, and hopefully, thank God they've stayed around, was really with my family. And, I didn't value that as much. Somehow I knew, oh, it's important for my clients to feel heard. But as, I made that separation, and I don't feel I'm doing better on that now. I want to have some self-compassion with myself about what I've done in the past. But do you find that people kind of silo, like this is how I am at work and this is how I am at home? And what I'm hearing you say is, well, like that's not
You're really
that we
who you
all,
are. Yes. You're really who
yeah.
you are everywhere. But your story you just told was my story too. I have decades and decades of continuing education so I can stay up with the field and the latest technology and science to be able to provide to people. And I remember, oh gosh, I guess about 8 years ago, I took this communication skills class. And in it, all of a sudden, I had the realization like, oh my gosh, I actually do listen to myself. I actually do listen to my clients. And then I think, but my husband, my two sons, oh yeah, I'm listening. I'm reading something. Oh, I'm listening to the television going, I thought we were watching this movie together. Well, we are. No, you're not. You're on your, and so all those things that help point to, wait a minute, the people I care most about in this world are getting the least attention. And is that really fit with my values? And so it didn't mean taking away from another group of people, my clients or that, but it just meant that when I'm there to really be responsive and present. And again, so it just takes that practice. And hopefully we'll get into the book that I wrote, the gifts we already all have, and using those gifts from the C-suite to people just going out and do their business. I've been using those gifts and they're going, oh my gosh, it really makes a difference in my relationship with myself and other people to use the four gifts of forgiveness, of healing, of unity, and hope in action. They're making amazing things happen. And that's why I was delighted to talk to you about all of this, what we're talking about. These are just fundamental, foundational things about being effective in life for yourself and for others.
Yes, I so want to talk about your book. And I realized as I see it in the background when I gave your intro, I didn't mention, your best-selling book of The Sacred Gifts, Indigenous Wisdom for Modern Times. I would be so thrilled if you would share the four gifts with us, what they are,
Yes.
maybe a little bit more detail.
Though, as I was mentioning, we all already have them. So that's the good news. All right. You already have them. And these gifts were given in the 90s. 27 indigenous elders from different traditions all over the world came together. And they were in ceremony and they answered in ceremony and they created a hoop. And it's the eagle hoop prophecy with 100 eagle feathers they hung from the hoop. So that's a story in itself. How do you get 100 eagle feathers? Anyway, in that weekend, they sang and prayed and talked and meditated. And in the end, they put four gifts into the hoop for all humankind, for all of us, in order to bring back harmony and balance, how to be in healthy relationship with ourselves, other human beings, and the earth itself. So the four gifts are the first gift, the power to forgive the unforgivable. And if you're like some people, oh, forgiveness, immediately some things probably popped into your mind. And then maybe right after that is, oh, I don't know if I want to forgive. I don't know if I can forgive. Forgiveness is a very important path to self-love and to be able to do care and love of others, because we're using up so much energy when we hold on to things that hurt, or that we either have resentment for, did or did not happen in the past. It doesn't mean forgetting it. It doesn't mean not seeking justice. It doesn't mean that you don't create new systems and structures to make sure that kind of pain and hurt doesn't happen again. But it means you're not stuck in the past. So that's one of those gifts that I'm working a lot with leaders, because they're realizing they have things they're still resentful that's happened in their businesses, in failures before, even successes that aren't happening at the level they did before. So forgiveness is a leadership tool. The second gift that was put in the hoop for all of us to use is the gift of unity. And just like what you're doing, this wonderful work, and taking this work out and not only honoring the very specific kind of accounting and projections and all the things to help people live a quality life, but also that to be able to strengthen from within, that this is the whole human being matters here. So to be able to be in unity, we can say unity, and most businesses bring me in because they want to have more unity, more engagement. And I'll say, yes, we can go for it. And there's lots of methods we can use to bring that together. Like, you want to have more women in your organization. You want to have more people of color in your organization. You want to have white men who maybe don't just fit the mold of all the other white men that are in your organization. So they want this diversity. But I will say we can have all these things set in place, but unless you also do your forgiveness and the third gift, healing, you will only go so far on the unity. So healing is the third gift. We already all have that ability to heal. And it's healing every day we do, from little hurts and missteps that happen, that we know that, first of all, to heal, we have to listen. We have to know something's not right? Whether it's mental or it's actual physical. And so we don't want to wait too long on either of those, because that can cause even greater harm. So, like, listening to ourselves, gathering people who are supportive to us so that we can hear that information and feedback if there's something we need to do. And then, of course, getting into loving ourselves and into action, because it's all about action. We have to do something with it. And the last gift, the fourth gift. So we've talked about forgiveness, unity, healing, and the fourth gift is the gift of hope in action. And you think about all the businesses, perhaps some of the people who are listening, that when you were younger, maybe you knew very early, kind of like I did, somewhat of what I was going to do in life, but maybe you didn't. But you had some vision, some dream, something came forward, somebody you saw doing something that you admired, that person became sort of a hero or to you. And then you followed. So this was a thought, a vision, a dream, something pulling you. And so hope, especially at this time, is more important than ever. But it's not the kind of hope that, oh, I'm just going to hope, sit back. I'm talking about the kind of hope that compels you to go forward, compels you to put together that business, compels you to want to develop your people, your team, yourself, if you're a solo business. But that gets you so that you keep pulling you towards that dream of whatever the size and scope and how many people you want to impact and the quality of life you want to live. So that hope in action is key. And what I tell people to do is dream. Daydream, dream at night, ask for what you want before you go to sleep. It's really critical, because all these inventions and things that we're seeing and what you're even doing in your life probably started as some dream or vision before, and that hope will carry you forward to bring those gifts, bring your contribution to all of us, because we need it. Life itself is calling us now, with all the things that we're seeing happening, is we're needed.
When you were saying dream, and I want to come back to the work you've done on the environment and in the rainforest. So when Anita and I spoke, we realized one thing we have in common is, well, it's not necessarily in common. I've gotten to participate in this. I've been to the rainforest in Ecuador with Lynn Twist, who is this amazing woman, author of The Soul of Money. And what I found out when I was speaking with Anita is she leads trips for the Pachamama Alliance, which is this organization that Lynn was one of the founders of. And Anita, you're on their board as well. And when I was in the rainforest, we learned a lot about this idea of learning from our dreams. And we had a elder in the community really help interpret our dreams. And we went through this dream ceremony. So it's landing with me how your background and bringing this ancient wisdom in, how you're bringing it in to suggestions for us in our modern life. So
Yes.
is that was some of the genesis of that?
Yes. Well, I've known Lynn. I just saw her the last couple of days. We're in board meetings, but we are, as I mentioned before, we're part of the earth. All science tells us, biologists, famous international, and everyone. The UN also is pointing to us, countries asking for indigenous wisdom now, because it's not a coincidence that over 80% of the most diverse lands left on this earth, on this precious earth of ours, are lands that are indigenous people are on, because we've learned how to stay in a not only just sustainable relationship with the earth, but regenerative. And so that's really important. So when you went down there, you were learning about that for yourself. And that again, what's wonderful about being alive is we can look outside, but what we really want to do to sustain something is look inside too. And so look inside and seeing, what is your purpose? Who are you? What are you? What is it that you value? What are you dreaming? Because those dreams can bring you forward. And, luckily we're at a time now that we know more about how the brain works, how our intuition works. We know more through quantum physics about that. We're more about energy and things like that, that it doesn't seem so woo woo. But I will tell you, even this morning, we sent out something to a client last night, and all of a sudden I woke up out of a dream and it was like, no, that client needs more. They asked for that, but their board of directors actually wants something else. And I got a hold of them and they were like, how did you know that? And I said, well, part of it is experience. Part of it was I was listening to my dream. I was paying attention rather than, no, this is my list to do that or not. I took a moment and allowed that to come through. And sure enough, we added a couple more pieces and they're thrilled. Now, so that didn't come from some long linear analysis, which also is valuable. Nobody's going to take that away from me either. But when you add that with our dreaming, our feeding, nourishing our images of what might be possible, then what we're able to do not only individually, because really we do nothing alone, but when we collectively come together, wow, then what we can manifest in our lives, in our business, and on a more sustainable Mother Earth. So I'm so delighted, yeah, that we share that. So every year since 2010 or 8, somewhere around there, I spent for a number of years. We didn't go this year. I take a group of business leaders and their families, sometimes their teams, and we go for 12 days. And it's such an immersion. It's such a wonderful thing that everyone comes back out transformed. But what transforms them is really understanding, by being immersed in nature in that way, with the indigenous elders there and that wisdom, that they are mirrors of who they are. We all hold the wisdom. Just allow it to listen to it and allow it to come through and then act on it. It's quite a wonderful thing to have the evolution of human beings now understanding so much more broadly what we used to categorize only in religion or spirituality. Now we're starting to understand these things coming together like this, because it is the wholeness of who we are. We're all of that: spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical.
I love how you're in the business world talking about these things. I also am so excited when we can start to travel again to go back with you. I took our daughter when I went, and my husband and our son kind of missed out on that, but I want to go. And I was just reminded at one of my big realizations while I was there is about listening more with my heart and not my head, because I've spent so much of my life and it served me well in my growing my business. And ever since I started doing that, all of a sudden my intuition and my clarity on who to call and what the next thing to do and how to really serve people has skyrocketed. And it was really um, as I believe,
That's
I
so
think I
good.
probably always had it, but really kind of
You did.
uncovered while I was there. Yeah.
Like, with being a great financial planner, every year you get better. It takes practice, right? So you have this gift, but now you're using it. And what we know from science, I'm always adding in science, and I especially do that because I work with a lot of engineers and financial types and those in different corporations, is that so they don't get scared away. Like, this seems like, what do you mean, Ellen? You're through your heart, that you're listening through your heart. But what we know from science, for example, is that we know in a 14-foot radius that we're impacting. I hook up sometimes people into these little machines, and we're able to track the heart rate variability. And so if we are there, and if we begin to start listening from our heart, start really paying attention from there rather than our mind, what comes through is calm. There's a different kind of energy that happens. Anxiety, all those kinds of things, harriedness and stuff start to drop away. And you can see not only my heart rate variability, but I start impacting those around me 14 feet. So we can come in with anxiety and all that, everything, and you need to be true to your emotions. So you have to name what you have, and then you can redirect it. And when we do that, we're impacting the people around us, and we're able to bring more of our ability to be reflective and thinking and intuitive, bringing all that together. So I love that you said that you listen from your heart. So some of the things I teach leaders is to listen with the softest part of your ears and an expanding heart. Mm. And I don't think I really need to explain that. If you just, for those of you watching and listening, just think about that. Like, okay, I'm going to listen right now to this person, to myself, with the softest part of my ears and the expanding heart. And then you'll get to where Ellen has been practicing and doing for some time now, since the rainforest.
So I want to ask you a question, which is probably not a fair question to ask you when we only have a few minutes left, and it should have been like, or should have been, it can't, a whole nother show. But there is appropriately, and there has been attention in the financial services industry of wanting to have a more diverse either team. There's, I think 85% of advisors are still men, most of them white men, and that's nothing wrong with that. And we don't necessarily look like the rest of the world or our clients. And so if there was some ways you can point us in to be more inclusive or have more diversity, and I'm laughing at like, this is a question. Can you give me like a one sentence answer to that question? It's kind of ridiculous.
I will give you, can I have a minute?
Yes, you can have more than a minute, for sure.
Okay, I'll just 1 or 2 minutes. There's 2 things that I want to offer you. One, because some of it you can get just online free if you want, but is to look at undoing unconscious bias. And that's not because, oh my gosh, it's trying to say I'm bad, I'm doing it. The reality is we have 11 million bits of information every second. We're only aware of 40 or 50 bits. So we're talking about all of us. So what's key is when we're conscious of things that we do, we can choose to change it. When it's happening at an unconscious level, so our desire to just be comfortable and be only with people who look or went to the same school or something that's similar to us, then we look for this confirmation bias all the time. Well, that's sort of wonderful. However, we're limiting our lives. We're limiting a lot of skill that could come in. So I would say engage in some unconscious bias training. And it's just very powerful. It's one that I'm in big demand for. Lots of places are asking for that, whether they're small entrepreneurial or big, large corporations. The other thing that I want to gift to you all is that, and that you'll provide them with a link in that, is that I often start people like, where do I begin to be more inclusive? Like, how do I do that? Well, always first and foremost is build relationships with a real person who's of a different race, a different gender, different physical ability, different class, whatever it is. And so there's places you can do that in schools and churches, community organization, whatever it is. But there is this matrix that I developed and I give freely to people. And it's called the Strategic Matrix for Diversity and Inclusion Initiatives. And so if you just download that and answer some of the questions of whether you are, whether you're a solopreneur or whether you have a team or you're more large, it'll help to begin to guide you strategically, like, what is it that I'm really wanting to have happen? Do I have my structure in place? Am I falling in line with my values? And then you start bringing people into a space where you're able to really not only invite them in, whether they're clients or your employees, but you're able to include their gifts because there isn't anything consciously or unconsciously that's preventing you from doing that. And so, with these growing populations, and we're talking about the kinds of funds that looking at Latinos, Native Americans, even and African Americans, on and on, Asian. That these are huge markets that we're missing out on if there could be some kind of unconscious bias there. So I'm not talking about people of malintent. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about just by virtue of living and different things of being acquainted with and not acquainted with that can infect you. So please use that, the strategic matrix for diversity and inclusion initiatives. And I think it'll help you. And then if you need more help, you'll be at a site that you can find more information about me and others who could be of support to you.
So beautiful. And just want to again encourage all of you to get Anita's book, The Four Sacred Gifts. It's such a beautiful merging of ancient wisdom and practical advice for how we can all incorporate this in our lives, in our businesses, in our personal lives. And I have been part of trainings that Anita has led. She is masterful. She's masterful in engaging people. So for any of you out there that are with companies that bring in speakers and you're looking at how to have a more diverse team or how to have more inclusion or getting rid of unconscious bias, or you just want this kind of discussion we've had, please search out Anita. She's so amazing, such a beautiful human, and really will give a different take than I think is being typically given out there, which it's all good. Like that we're having these conversations, it's perfect. But please reach out to Anita. She's fabulous. And I want to truly thank you for your time today. And again, I'm so grateful to be able to spend time with you here. And I'm anxious for the time I can get on a plane and go back into the Amazon with you. That would be so fun.
Me too. I would welcome that. And thank you for not only a great interview and being of service to all your people, but also for treating me with such dignity. I really appreciate that.
Thank you. And thank you for each of you out there watching or listening to this. I'm so grateful to have you be part of this Horse's Mouth community, and thrilled to have you here. Some of you may know this. If not, if this kind of conversation has been interesting to you, which I know it has, that you might be interested in the Extraordinary Advisor Masterclass. And part of the way to find out about that is to go to horsesmouth.com/superpower, where you'll have access to a webinar that I did on finding your superpower and your unique edge. And there's a button on there that you can find out more about the Extraordinary Advisor Masterclass. It's starting at the beginning of November. And I'm so excited to be sharing a lot of the types of things that we talked with Anita about today. So we're going to be talking about how to listen more deeply to your clients, how to set goals in a more visionary way, and would love to have you be part of that. And to check out more and see if this makes sense, go ahead and watch that Superpower webinar. It was super helpful for people to help identify what's up for them and how they find their unique edge, and also to learn more about the masterclass. So I am so thankful for you being here, as I said. And my question for you today is, how big of a positive impact are you willing to make? Remember, be great and